free for packet pickup, giving yourself extra time to drop your items on Saturday and attend a course transition tour, just so that you feel really familiar with the area. All these things that Mark is talking about, the sharp turn out of transition and the swim course and where you'll be running in and out of transition, you'll have your best race if you're familiar with the area and you're not concerned about which way you're going. So my suggestion is just give yourself lots of time, make yourself familiar with the area over the weekend, and you'll have a great experience.
You know, it's also normal to be anxious about this race, and especially as a first-timer. And one of the things that's really nice about the race is that we do have a team of psychologists at the start area, and you should really avail yourself of their expertise.
Absolutely. Other questions?
Yep, I have a question for Victoria. Do we leave our transition bags and transition gear with the bike check-in on Saturday, or do we bring them with us on Sunday?
So this is a personal preference. When I race, and if I'm at a race that requires an early check-in for the bike, I typically just leave my bike. And to be honest, I don't even leave my computer on the bike. And I bring all those things on race morning. And that's for a couple reasons. We have a lot of athletes participating in a very tight space. So once other athletes start to set up their stuff, things get knocked around, they get moved. So I think it will help you have confidence that everything you need on race morning will be there if you place it in the morning, especially if you have fresh water bottles and things like that and sports drink that you want to be chilled or freshly mixed. So my suggestion is drop your bike only and your personal items on race morning. But again, it's a matter of preference. Mark, I know you race all the time. What's your strategy?
Yeah, again, it is New York, and you know, it's tough to say. But I personally like to leave everything. I don't want to have to forget something in the morning. I just like to have it there. What is another very good thing to do is to write a checklist. If you've got a checklist that you can look at and say, well, I did this, I did this, I did this, and cross those things off, you'll be able to go to sleep at night and say, you know what, I've done all the things. I tend to like to leave the stuff that's there. I'm trusting the security, and you know, I'm trusting that my bike to the right and bike to the left and bike, you know, in back of me, that everybody's respectful of everybody else's property, and that, you know, it shouldn't be a problem. Just remember also that there are bike techs that will be in there. Vic, who's doing our bike support?
Bike support is provided by Toga Bikes. So they will have pumps in transition. We'll actually have 20 pumps per transition spaced out throughout transition. So you don't need to bring your own standing pump, but they will also have mechanics with pumps and tools and our bar end plugs and things like that as well. Also, that just reminded me, you know, again, it's personal preference, so whatever you choose to do is fine, whether it's race morning or on Saturday. But something that I hear all the time as I'm standing at the swim start is, hey, can you make an announcement for an extra pair of goggles? Mine just broke. For some reason, I think it has to do with the anxiety of the morning. People tend to snap goggles all the time at the swim start. So what I usually do when I race also is I bring an extra pair of goggles, hand them to a friend before I go in the water, or sometimes I'll donate them to another person in need since it's such a common occurrence up at the swim start. So just a little bit of personal experience advice.
Yeah, again, I think with this race, remember, transition is essentially a mile away from the swim start. So you will be walking up to the swim start. Some people do it barefoot. I think the path is much better than it used to be. Again, I think there's potential glass that's there that we can't get all of it out of there. So it might be worthwhile to buy a, you know, $2 pair of sandals that you can walk up to the start, take off, and throw in the garbage. But I think that can make or break instead of having to worry about, oh, gee, I left my sneakers up there, unless you have a family member that can bring them down with you. So maybe a little pair of sandals might be helpful.
Do you have any recommendations for training logs?
Other questions, Allie?
Oh, yes. One more. Do you have any recommendations for training logs? Are there good off-the-shelf logs one can purchase, or do you recommend just using a notebook?
You know, honestly, I just use a calendar. That's all I do. Calendar with boxes, and I fill in the boxes of what I do. I think if you have a training plan, if you're using a coach, they might give you a calendar There's a website called trainingpeaks.com. There's actually an online training calendar, which is actually fairly interactive, and I know a lot of coaches utilize that because you can make things public so other people can view it. So if you want to share it, you can certainly share it. But I tend to just like using, a calendar that I can look at. It's been hard for me to transition to an online. I like the piece of paper. I like to hold on to it. So you can call me old-fashioned, but it's just one of those things that I like to do. But a standard calendar works, or trainingpeaks.com is a good site.
I'm much younger than Mark, and I use Training Peaks.
Thanks, Beck.
Well, I'm much older, and I do use a training log book. I think the important thing with the a training log is what you put into it. And it shouldn't just be what you're doing that day, meaning it shouldn't be just a 6-mile run. You should talk about and notate what the effort was like, how you feel, what you felt like before. Were you fatigued before you started your workout? It's also in your training log, when you get a new shoe, you should mark that. I mean, I used to mark it with a in blue when I had a new shoe. Besides, write the date on my running shoe. The other thing is that if as a woman, if you're menstruating, I'd put that down also. So it's not just what you're doing that day. You should also make some comments about how you were feeling before your workout, and what you feel like after the workout.
Another question. Any
Allie,
advice?
what do we got?
Yep, another question. Any advice on the best way to warm up since we can't get into the Hudson to warm up? I'm running, should I run up from transition to the race start? I'm worried about the water feeling cold when I jump in.
Vic, what do you think the water temperature is going to be?
The water temperature typically is 76 to 78. I think they took a water sample recently, and I think it was 76. So that's pretty warm, if you ask me. If you have a wetsuit on, I think you'll be fine with water temperature. If you're not wearing a wetsuit, maybe you'll want to warm up a little. But I think it's always good to get your joints loose and do some active dynamic stretching. But that's just my personal opinion.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. I think the water is warm. I think in a wetsuit, you're not going to get the shock as some early season races might when the water temperatures are in the 60s, and despite having on a wetsuit and despite peeing in your wetsuit, so it's nice and warm, this is not going to be a shocker by any means. If you warm up well, jogging a mile up to the swim start, then by all means do that. I wouldn't do anything different per se, but you could do some arm windmills, which would be kind of any standard warm-up drill for swimming, which would just, putting your arms out to the side at 90 degrees and just making small circles, forwards, then backwards, then making bigger circles. But again, any type of warm-up would be fine. But again, I don't think you're going to have an issue with, the temperature differential with the water. And you shouldn't worry about that.
Another question. This participant's last try, she hurt her neck after the race. For about 2 weeks it was bothering her. It was due to looking up a lot, clearly. How do I not get a sore neck this go around my second triathlon?
Well, I think there's twofold things. I mean, neck position or neck alteration of position occurs at the swim as well as on the bike. So on the swim, I mean, this is something that often needs to be addressed by a swim coach to help develop better technique of rotation, better technique of sighting. I think the good thing about the New York City Tri is that you're bounded on both sides. There's not many places that you can go side to side without either hitting a wall, which is the swim wall on your left, or running into a kayak that's going to be keeping you close to that left-sided wall. So you're not going to have some incredible difficulty with sighting. There's not going to be huge swells. Well, let me knock on wood. There should not be huge swells in the Hudson at that point. And even if there's some chop, it's a very well marked out course. So I don't think you're going to struggle with sighting. When you talk about the bike, I mean, this is all about bike fit. And I think before you venture out, it might be worth it to go to a local bike store and have them look at your position on the bike, especially if you're in aero bars. I mean, everybody's, trying to get more aerodynamic than the next, but honestly, if you become that aerodynamic, you lose some of your efficiency and some of your speed because you're uncomfortable and you don't like to be in that position. So raising the handlebars a little bit can often help that so that your neck is not cocked back all the way. I think would be the best advice. So definitely seek out, a bike store to take a look at you on your bike.
Another question. After the swim, it seems like a long way back to transition in bare feet. Any recommendations?
You can certainly sneak another pair of flip-flops right at the corner there if you have a friend next
Oh, no, don't listen to him.
Don't listen to me, Fred.
No.
That was my secret. My shoes will be the only one there.
Somebody told me they actually swam with a pair of flip-flops inside their wetsuit.
You're not supposed to do that.
Yeah.
Again, it is a long way. We wanted carpeting, but no one will donate the carpet for us. But again, it's a long way, and I think you just, it's been swept. There's usually nothing that's there. We've really, I don't even remember over the last 3 to 4 years whether we've had anybody cut their foot, along that way, because the volunteers do make a conscious effort about sweeping that area. So I don't think that should be an issue.
And in addition to that question, how long is the distance back to each transition area from the end of the swim?
Vic, I think that's your answer.
Yeah, it's on the it's actually on the map, I believe, in the athlete guide. I'll have to look that up. Off the top of my head, I would say it's an estimated 400 yards to the south end of transition red and 700 yards to the south end of yellow. Not positive, but I think that's pretty darn close. So it is quite a run, but the good news is everybody's doing it, and you're only competitive with people within your area of transition. So everyone you're competing against, everyone you're racing against, they're all doing the same thing.
What is the swim exit like? Is it a ramp or a ladder to get out of the Hudson?
The swim exit, it's actually a barge that extends out into the river with a submerged ramp that is about 8 feet wide, so a few people can exit at the same time. They'll exit up onto the barge, and then as soon as you come out of the water on the barge, you'll make a left onto a ramp that connects the barge to the seawall. It's a metal ramp. You just want to be careful on it. It does have handrails, but it can get slippery after, when it's wet. And then once you come off the ramp, you'll step off onto the concrete seawall, and that's when you make this run into transition we were just talking about.
So I have another question here. It is my first try. Are there group cycling cues or known etiquette? I'm worried about running into others.
Well, I think the most important thing you have to understand is if you're slow, you stay on the right. And you always pass on the left, and USAT rules are that there's obviously no drafting allowed, but you are allowed to ride up onto someone's back wheel, but the minute you come within, and they'll go over all of this, the minute you come within 3 bike lengths of the bike in front of you, you are required to pass that bike. Now, by USAT rules, if that bike on the right-hand side does not allow you to pass, that's what's called blocking. It's difficult to enforce, but you are allowed to ride up onto someone's wheel and then pass them on the left. Do not